Sears. It was once the biggest retailer in the world, with the office space to match.
Now we on top.
Beginning as a catalog in the 19th century, Sears offered it all. From clothes to houses, they delivered to every corner of America. They expanded to hundreds of stores, giving birth to mall culture and becoming worth billions. But how did a retail empire so in touch with consumers become out of fashion? This is the tragic story of how the everything store ended up losing everything.
I am the greatest. My power venerated. Yeah. History I'm creating. It's there for the taking. It's destiny in the making. It's destiny in the making.
Sears is one of the greatest stories of American business. They are a company that was ahead of its time. It just didn't end so well.
We take it for granted now that we can order something online, it'll just be delivered to your home, sometimes the next day.
The idea was not started by Amazon or Walmart, it was Sears.
And they led the way with this idea of a department store.
As a kid in the 90s, I absolutely loved going to the malls.
When you think about what first brought us there, it's because our parents first brought us there. And what brought our parents there? It was Sears.
Come see the many sides of Sears.
Marker. I'm Steve Dennis. I'm the former VP of Corporate Strategy at Sears.
My name is Alan Lacey. I joined Sears at the end of 1994 to be Chief Financial Officer. I became CEO in 2000.
Sears was really, when I was growing up, I think a lot of folks today think about Amazon. It was the prominent shopping place.
Sears was the world's largest retailer, and it all started out from a catalog.
In 1886, Richard Warren Sears starts a watch company, and he teams up with Alva Roebuck to sell watches through their mail order catalog.
They soon expanded into all other types of goods.
At the time, you could get lots of things if you happened to live in a big city. But once you got outside of the big city, the mail order catalog was really the everything store for the country.
They sold anything you could possibly have or want inside of your home.
Dry goods, plows, houses.
You could order a house and have the pieces delivered by train. In 1925, Sears realized that automobiles were changing the shape of how cities were working.
As roads got developed, as middle America got to be built out,
Populations were moving out into the suburban areas.
They wanted to be a part of that infrastructure, so they ended up opening their first retail location in Chicago. Sears created what we now think of as a department store. These stores were like a block big, and they had everything that you could ever imagine.
they were getting the entire family there, and they had stuff for every part of the family.
Department stores were a really big deal back then. You had Macy's, you had Bloomingdale's, you had Sears, but the thing was, Sears was so much more robust. They literally had everything that you needed.
In 1945, Sears hit $1 billion in sales, the equivalent of $16 billion today. And along the way, the company had started doing something that few others were doing.
They started their own private label brands that were only available at Sears.
They've got Kenmore for appliances. They open Allstate Insurance. They've got Die Hard for batteries.
The Craftsman brand was obviously the tool brand.
Now these are the new Craftsman Eager mowers from Sears, powered by the exclusive Eager 1 engine.
And those were leading national brands.
Customers sometimes didn't even realize they were exclusive to Sears because they had such power.
It was a sense of almost American pride to have this in your home.
I think it was so much about the fabric of America and what particularly younger families were engaged with.
We're at a Sears store to find out why Sears is where America shops.
It's easy for me. I can pick up tennis balls, children's clothing, torque wrenches.
They decided to open Sears Auto Centers right next to the Sears.
When people were doing their family portraits, they had that there. They did a great job of providing so much.
By 1969, Sears was the largest retailer in the world, and now needed new headquarters to support their growth.
In its heyday, the company built the Sears Tower.
It was the tallest building in the world.
If you're going to be known for something as being the biggest retailer, you might as well have the biggest building on top of it.
That's how powerful Sears was. It was this beacon of retail, literally towering over its competition.
By 1973, they had over 840 retail stores to go along with their catalog and their brand.
The 50s, 60s, and 70s had seen the concept of shopping malls steadily gaining popularity.
The only thing was, you got to figure out how to draw traffic into the mall. And so the mall creators had this idea of having an anchor store.
An anchor store was a destination. Why would people go there? I'm gonna go buy, a drill, or I'm gonna go buy a washer. The kids might hang out and eat a pretzel and throw pennies in the fountain.
And every mall wanted Sears as one of their anchor stores.
Is calling me, gotta have it. We agree.
The cool thing for Sears was the malls were willing to allow them to be the anchor store for free.
All the other stores that were in the middle of the mall, they were paying rent. Sears was living rent-free at the mall.
But in the 70s, inflation skyrockets, pushing shoppers to look for a deal. And they start seeking out discount chains like Walmart.
It's self-service, you just walk in the store, you go load up your cart, pick the things you want, and then you go check out. With Sears, if you were to go in, you would have a salesperson at every single department. And so Sears had significantly more overhead to cover because of the way they were structured.
Sears was losing traction as a retailer. Still huge, still growing, but there started to be more pressures. So I think it was a push for Sears to explore other areas of growth.
And so they basically diversify into a suite of financial services for their homeowner family customer.
They bought Dean Witter for financial services.
They acquire Caldwell Banker for real estate.
You had a mortgage business to help them finance their home. You had Allstate to provide them with homeowners insurance and auto insurance.
Socks and stocks, people. This is all about getting as broad as you can, creating all these diverse revenue streams.
They now decide that they want to compete against the major credit cards for people to use anywhere. They go up against Amex, Visa, and MasterCard, and they launch the Discover card.
With the Discover card, now they could make money on everything the customer purchases, even outside of Sears.
And they do a Super Bowl ad.
Why should I pay with just any credit card when this one pays me money back?
The Discover card.
The financial services was a nicely profitable business in those days. For much of those years, we had financial services paying a lot of the bills.
Sears is the mall king in the 80s.
I remember going to the mall. You wanted to go and hang out and see where your friends were.
When you first started wanting to date girls or meet boys, that's where you would go to do that.
But then everything shifts in the late 80s.
You had this emerging retail class of off-mall big box and discount store chains.
And we were starting to come under increasingly greater threats.
Sears is fighting two battles. They have the discount killer. They're doing everything that Sears does, but cheaper. Then you have the category killers, who are solely focused on just one category and dominating that. For almost the last century, they had been the top retail store.
So 1991 comes along, and for the first time, they lose that top spot as the nation's #1 retailer. And who takes over? Walmart.
Sears has lost its status as America's #1 retailer to Walmart.
In the late 80s, early 90s, you could make the argument that Sears at the corporate level started to get quite distracted and suffered from trying to do too many things. The problem with the retail business wasn't that we didn't offer insurance or we didn't offer mortgages. The problem with the retail business is that other competitors were coming along and consumer behavior was changing.
So the shareholders are now falling out of love with the diversification model.
They need to focus, so they offload.
Sears takes out Caldwell Banker, they take out Dean Witter, they take out Allstate, and they make them their own separate company so that they can assign value to what each of those companies are.
As part of the unwind of the financial services strategy, it was felt that the Sears Tower was probably not the right place for the standalone retailer to be. It was just too expensive, too high of a profile. The company was hoping to sell it at a nice profit and generate some cash for the ongoing company. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't great, and as it turns out that the mortgage on the Sears Towers was worth more than the building itself. And so rather than selling the tower, the company basically handed the keys to the mortgage lender.
Sears is searching for ways to keep up with Walmart and all these other competitors, so they look at anything they can do to cut costs.
And so they really have two sections now. They have the catalog business and the retail side of things. But when they look into the catalog business, they're losing $1 million a day.
$1 million a year? No, a day.
The catalog business had really been neglected for years. There was very little investment in it.
So they thought, okay, we can either keep the retail and try to revive the catalog and hemorrhage more money, or we can shut down the catalog.
They make this decision to kill the catalog and to build up the retail side of things.
Sears was very focused on making the mall stores compete better.
Because their hard stuff is working well, their hardline business. Kenmore is a strong brand, Craftsman's a strong brand.
And then we have what's called in the business soft lines, which would be apparel, bedding, cosmetics.
They're looking at all these different sectors. What are we going to have the most success in?
Our desire to try to be a better department store meant doubling down on the softer side of Sears.
Come see the softer side of Sears.
One of the shortcomings of the softer side of Sears was it was mostly a marketing campaign.
We were so lured into this marketing campaign of come see the softer side of Sears, but when we went to go see it, we didn't like what we saw.
The invitation was better than the party.
With retail sales rocky, Sears continues trying to cut costs.
One of the things that was done to try to reduce the cost structure quickly was an early retirement plan to basically get as many long service, higher paid employees to leave as possible. And literally almost every person over 50 years old in the company took it and left. And I think that was very much a testament to how little confidence that people had that Sears as a standalone retailer would actually succeed.
But then, in the mid to late 90s, the internet takes off and provides a new opportunity.
You've got mail.
They made the internet easier than ever.
As the 90s progressed, it was pretty clear that e-commerce was going to be a big deal. And Sears launched Sears.com.
We were one of the earliest to launch a website.
By the end of the decade in the early 2000s, of bricks and mortar retailers, Sears had the leading online presence.
Everything you're looking for right at your fingertips.
They were actually really early to the online space, but the only problem was their core business, which was bringing in all the revenue, was dwindling.
The upside potential of e-commerce was always going to be limited by how well the stores were performing, how well the overall brand was positioned. We needed more powerful differentiating brands.
So they purchased a company called Land's End for $1.9 billion.
They had that reputation for quality. They were a little bit more upscale, but not too expensive.
On top of that, Land's End had a very highly lucrative catalog business. So not only are they getting this cooler brand, but they're getting that catalog business and those customers as well.
Lots went wrong in that rollout.
Weirdly, this is Business 101. You know, you got to look at how things are going to play in each region.
So there were certain parts of the country where people knew and loved Land's End and wore it all the time. But then there were other places like Texas and the South where people were like, what's Land's End?
It just didn't appeal to everybody. And so they didn't get the effect they were hoping for.
And they could have actually used that money to get their Sears brand off mall.
There's like a tectonic movement that's happening. We used to want to go to the mall, and now we want nothing to do with the mall.
You know, it started out with them getting all the free rent to be the anchor store, and now that same thing has become the anchor on the company.
The answer clearly was to get away from the malls as quickly as you realistically could.
So that same year, 2002, they decided to actually do that.
We don't quite have the money to go whole hog on this idea, but here's one called Sears Grand. Think about this as maybe a super Target.
They invest and open up a few concept stores, and they open them up near Walmarts, and they have appliances, they've got pharmacies. It's more of the everyday consumer.
This was meant to be their Walmart killer.
The hope was that this format would prove initially successful, and it could be a format that we could roll out to hundreds, if not thousands of stores over time.
So this concept of Sears Grand is working.
The Sears brand played well, even if it was across the street from our best-in-class competition.
And they want to be able to open up more retail stores around the country, but they don't have the capital to do that.
Sears sees a Hail Mary, the blue light special.
Kmart, our blue lights lower prices every day.
Kmart is filing bankruptcy.
Kmart had the perfect amount of real estate and buildings to execute this idea. And so Sears wants to acquire them so that they can get all of their real estate and start launching these Sears Grand stores everywhere.
So we approached Kmart about buying some of their locations and agreed on 50 of them.
And they see this as their last-ditch effort to be able to get off mall, and it seems like it's going to be a really great fix.
Here comes Eddie Lampert. Eddie Lampert is a hedge fund manager. He and some of his other boys in the private equity game decide to, though they own some Sears stock, turn around Kmart.
In the next year or so, Kmart got out of bankruptcy, Sears stock went down, Kmart's value went up, and things flipped.
At this point, Eddie is also a shareholder of Sears. So Eddie goes to Sears and he says, instead of buying our stores, what if we just acquired Sears and we brought everything into the fold together?
It's going to be more of a merger.
It becomes where Kmart actually acquires Sears.
For $11 billion.
Today, Kmart went shopping and came home with Sears.
I wish I was in the room to be like, don't do it.
There's a comedian I know who did a bit about how, well, it's great that Kmart and Sears are getting together because, you know, you're going to need those Craftsman tools to fix all that crap you buy at Kmart.
They had a lot of bad real estate. Their store sizes were all over the map. Many Kmart locations were basically across the street from a Sears store.
It was such a weird time because everybody thought Sears acquired Kmart because they came out as Sears Holding Group.
You have this branding issue again. They confused it with the softer side, and now they're confusing the Sears brand even more by getting associated with an even more discounted store such as Kmart.
Eddie wasn't a retail guy, he came from the hedge fund world. And so instead of going the route of really going all in on the Sears Grand, he kind of just says, let's take what we've got, maybe slap a coat of paint on it, put the Sears logo, and see how they go.
Wall Street loves Eddie's idea because he's not pouring a lot of debt into this. He's not pouring a lot of capital into this. They're looking at the cash flow. That's what Wall Street loves. So they're all in on Eddie's play.
Rather than spend money fixing up the stores, Sears begins buying back its own shares.
When a company does this, it means there are fewer shares available and the value of the remaining shares goes up.
Sears buys back $5 billion in stock, and the stock price hits an all-time high in 2007.
In business, what is appearing and what is reality, they can be two different things. So while this appears to be, this is a great move, the only people that are winning are the shareholders.
The stores got worse and worse.
There were no updates. They were pretty dilapidated.
Their sales have declined 10%. To put this in perspective, their competitors, Walmart and Target, had sales that were increasing that year.
And now we've got competitors like Amazon coming to play.
Then Eddie decides he wants to put presidents over each of his brands. And so Kenmore got a president, Craftsman got a president, Die Hard got a president, and he's making them compete for shelf space within his own company.
That can create a level of focus for important parts of the business, but that doesn't serve the customer by putting merchandise categories in competition with each other.
He didn't believe in loss leaders to get people in the doors.
Loss leaders are those products that are going to bring consumers into the store. A lot of stores lose money on milk, the Kmart, the Walmart, whatever, but people are going to get milk. What's the thing you think of when you're driving home? Oh, we need milk. So they might be losing money on milk, but they're making that back and then some on pickles and on chips.
The fundamentals of what's happening inside of these retail locations, it was not a good look for the consumer.
Then the 2008 housing crisis hits.
Millions of investors lost all or almost all of their money.
In 2008, you had the housing bust. This is the big one. They can't buy houses. They're not buying appliances and tools at the level they were before.
The stock price got crushed. Sales got crushed.
So just 2 years after the 2008 financial crisis, in 2010, Sears is on a straight trajectory down.
By 2014, they were in dire straits. They were in a lot of trouble. So what does Eddie do? He offloads Land's End. It is the end of Land's End.
And shareholders are starting to become very angry with him because they feel like he's really just selling off these pieces of the company to line his own pockets. Then Eddie ends up selling over 200 store locations to his real estate holding company called Seritage. He sold them for $2.7 billion.
How this gets interpreted for the shareholders, they lose $1 billion in value in just 5 days.
So in 2016, he becomes the most hated CEO in America.
When you think it can't get worse, it gets worse. Now the shareholders have made an ultimate decision to sue him.
And in 2017, he sells off the much beloved Craftsman brand to Black & Decker for $900 million.
Eddie Lampert would settle the shareholder lawsuit for $40 million, but the trajectory of the company is clear.
At a certain point, it was, on life support. We all know how the movie ends. We just don't know how long it is.
So what's going to happen to Sears this year, in your view? I think this is going to be their last holiday season.
2018 is a sad year for the Sears holding group.
Their stock dips below $1. They are delisted from the stock market.
They have pretty much no choice.
Sears is filing for bankruptcy after a long, slow decline.
2019, a company called Transform Co. buys Sears. Great news, right? No, it is owned by none other than Eddie Lampert.
Sears will live on at least until Friday.
Eddie Lampert decides to bail Sears out of bankruptcy.
So now people are getting wise to Eddie. Hey, wait a second. Remember that time where Eddie made all these brand presidents of Craftsman and Kenmore? Was this his play to chop this up? Like when you get your car stolen, they sell it for parts.
The creditors Sears owes money to take legal action.
In 2022, Eddie Lampert ends up settling the lawsuit for $175 million. He doesn't admit to any wrongdoing, and the case is closed. Today, there are 15 Sears that remain and 3 Kmarts. It's a grim reminder of what used to be the largest retailer in the world.
What's so powerful about the story of Sears is they were so ahead of their time in many different instances.
Sears established its dominance because they always met customers where they were. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business. Sears was in business for over 100 years, dominant, and yet they died a slow death because they didn't adapt.
Sears got literally boxed in by the box it operated in.
One of the takeaways from all of this is that a mature retailer is really a dying retailer. You have to constantly be innovating. You can't sit still.
Eddie Lampert went about everything like a hedge fund manager instead of a retail person, and the stores became weaker and weaker and weaker.
The reality is, when he got into Sears, they were already dying.
Even if he had done everything correctly, I think Sears had just kind of outworn its welcome to the consumer. Maybe he was smart for selling it for parts.
In case you're wondering if Eddie Lampert lost his fortune from his Sears deals, rest assured, his mega yacht is still traveling the high seas.
You a boss? No sir, I can't tell that. BS, we can smell that. We ain't buying if you sell that. Tell that. Deposit, you can mail that. I just heard my homie went and copped a brand new Hellcat. Make moves and make sense. It takes sense. Gram stunting, don't pay rent. Stay stiff through the hard times, now they bent. Filter out the noise and the shade that they sent.